Right. Hi, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for joining today. We're excited to kick off episode 4 of our Inside OrangeHRM product demo series. In today's session, we'll be diving into the roster module and also the time and attendance module. And we'll also be giving you an exclusive sneak peek into what's coming next. So we are really thrilled to share these updates and features with you, and we hope you are as excited. Today, we'll be having our Associate Vice President of Sales, Matt Vendramini, with us today. So before I hand it over to him, just a quick note, if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to drop them in the chat bar, and we will make sure to address all of them during the Q&A session that we are having at the end. However, if we're unable to address any of them due to time constraints, don't worry, we shall reach out directly to you. Thank you, and over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, good day, everyone. This is Matt, Associate VP of Sales here at OrangeHRM. It's nice to speak with you again here, and thanks for taking some time out of your busy days to join us. Okay, yeah, that's me. Real quick, wanted to just mention this now because oftentimes I forget before the end. We're going to cover a lot of information today. Obviously, it's going to be mostly generalized details, but we are happy to speak with you further about additional questions or setting up more in-depth demonstrations of some of the features we'll be discussing today. If you're interested in any of that, please reach out to us at sales@orangehrm.com, as it's written here on the screen, and our team will be happy to get back to you, schedule some time to go over things in greater detail for you. So I just wanted to mention that up front. Okay, so let's jump into today's agenda. So when we do these, I always like to kind of set the context of the meeting about OrangeHRM, what our core modules are, and what we've traditionally offered as an organization to our clients. So we're just going to do a quick refresh of that, and then kind of transition into introducing roster and kind of where roster fits into the a collection of capabilities and the value that we look to provide to our clients, why we developed it, what the goals of it are, and how it works in our clients' ecosystem and there forward. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about time and attendance. Now, obviously, time and attendance is something that we've done for a very long time here at OrangeHRM, but some of the changes and adjustments that we've made to it with reference to the additional capabilities we've introduced with the roster are things that we'll talk about today. And then the fourth topic is going to be upcoming features. Now, it's upcoming features specifically in the realm of time and attendance and roster. We've done some other webinars recently where we've talked kind of in a general sense about additional features, of which there's a lot. We've done a ton of development over the last 12 to 18 months. Much of that is coming to fruition now, but today we're going to focus specifically on time and attendance and roster upcoming features. So we'll cover what's available today and what's available around the corner and down the road in that sphere. And then, of course, we should have some time towards the end for your questions. So let's jump into it again. So let's start off by talking about OrangeHRM modules and the concepts around that. Okay, so those of you who have been using us for a long time are aware of kind of our core features, our core offering. So that's always been people management, talent management, compensation, and culture. So those are the four key areas where we look to provide value. And many of our clients have signed on because of the flexibility in how we set up, deploy, and service our clients, right? And that's that the people management module, which we call OrangeHRM Core, is the most central feature. So it's kind of the day-to-day operations of HR, where your HR database is going to live, where you set up permissions and access roles, etc., where you communicate with your employees, where you create and provide employee portals where they can access documents, see company updates or communications, log in and manage their own details or processes, etc. So people management has always been kind of our core focus as a core HR module. And then the functional areas that we've developed in and around, we're always, leave time, recruitment, and performance. But to sort of categorize those, we've sort of broken them into compensation, which encompasses, or traditionally has encompassed, leave and time and attendance. And obviously you can see roster as the new addition we'll talk about more. Talent management was always focused around recruiting and onboarding. We've recently introduced Onboarding Pro and some additional onboarding slash pre-boarding features there. And then, of course, Request Desk, which is a feature that is a bit of a multi-tool, but one of the things that it's traditionally done is employment requisitions, hiring requisitions, and that's why we tend to keep it in the talent management area. And then, of course, culture, which encompasses performance management tools, career development tools, and training. And recently, we've added the surveys module and employee voice module to that area as well. So that's traditionally been our offering, right? So those are the core areas. And then today we're going to talk about our latest big addition, of course, roster, and of course the knock-on effect it's had on time and attendance. So that's really been our focus here today. So introducing roster. So let's start off by talking about why did we introduce this module? Why roster? Um, so traditionally in OrangeHRM, we supported this concept of work work schedules, which really supported the idea of fixed schedules, right? And so the idea of fixed schedules were either these are the standard or typical hours for a given office, or potentially the standard or typical hours of of given employees within that office or within a region, perhaps, right? So the idea might be that Matt works, he's a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type employee. So those are his typical working hours. He doesn't work weekends. He doesn't work evenings. Other employees may be evening employees at that same location, or might be morning or overnight. So that's kind of a fixed schedule I would add to that employee. And that would be the typical hours in which we could track in OrangeHRM when it comes to things like total hours worked, or availability for things like leave, etc. Right? So that's kind of what fixed schedules did, and the concept that it covered within our platform and our capabilities. Um, but that would define typical working hours for an employee or the location. But why roster, right? So obviously that's a limited, the work schedules is a limited function, and it doesn't serve the needs of all clients and all diverse clients with different needs, particularly in those that would require dynamic shifts, right? So many of you operate businesses where employees have shifts that change, day to day, week to week, etc. Right? And in many cases, this is the norm or the standard in areas like healthcare, retail, manufacturing, and hospitality. Right? So obviously, certain industries and verticals or business types require shift building, right? Shift management and roster management, right? So we really built the roster module to be that. Now, traditionally, what we've done in the past is we can support those needs, but it would typically be through integrations with our partner organizations that specialize in roster tools, which at times worked well. Other times it's quite costly. It's another integration point. So some of our customers kind of shied away from it and weren't particularly interested in working with us in that way. And this way we could build a roster tool that really met the needs of our clients based on the feedback they provided to us directly in our development of the product, right? So we decided to create the roster to really close the loop on the value that we can add in the time and attendance, scheduling, leave tracking, compensation management sphere and area of our platform, and the value that we look to add for our employees. So that's a little bit of a background of why did we decide on roster, and why did we spend time developing and launching the feature as part of our offering. So I'm going to take some time today to review our roster highlights. So we'll talk first about shift management, employee scheduling intelligence, and then access, auditing, and communication. So those are going to be the real highlights that we'll cover today. So let's just jump right into it. So let's talk about shift management first, right? So when we started on this journey to build the roster module, we really looked at two or three key areas for information on how to build it and what to build. One was what did our clients need? So what communication did we get and feedback from those that were willing to provide that insight to us of how does your operation work? How do you do rostering and scheduling today? What are some of the important facets and goals that you would have from a roster software, and how can we support that in your business, right? So client feedback was one big area that we looked to. Second was what do competitive tools do? So what other roster tools on the market? What capabilities did they have? What was the general feedback about those features? And what might we need to consider as part of our development in creating a well-rounded and competitive solution compared to the market? And the third feature or the third consideration that we looked at was, well, where are the industries going, right? What do we need to either build initially or consider as, or build the precursors within the product that can be met in the roadmap later in terms of changes over time that need to be built into the roster capabilities so that we can build a tool that not only works for today, but can continue to be improved and work in the future as the needs change for our clients, existing clients and new clients down the road, right? So with that in mind, I'll kind of kick off some of the things that we have built today, right? So shift management obviously is central and a core feature for any roster tool, right? So creating and managing shifts, right? So the idea to build schedules quickly and assign shifts to users groups, to adjust shifts anytime to meet business needs, keep the process simple with an intuitive drag and drop experience, right? So within the roster tool, there's a couple things that you'll notice. One is I can set up different rosters for different groups. So like to take a hotel example, right? Maybe that hotel has a front desk area and that has staffing requirements throughout the day or at different times of the day. That hotel also has a restaurant. That restaurant has two areas, right? Maybe a dining room and a kitchen. So those two areas are also going to need their own unique roster requirements. Maybe there is service staff, right, to help guests with baggage, etc., and general requests. So we need to make sure that that area is staffed with the requisite number of personnel for different shifts and different periods of the day. So within the roster module, we can set up those groups, those shift groups, and then create the necessary headcount required within each group, right? So being able to create those, have the visibility needed to do that, right? How do we then, of course, it's one thing to build a roster for a week or 2 weeks or a month or a period of time in which we're building it out, but obviously business needs shift due to unforeseen factors at the time that the shift is being built. So we've built in some tools that allow shifts to be adjusted to meet business needs. Maybe people need to change their shifts quickly because of someone calling in sick or something like that, or maybe we've decided we need more staff because there's an influx of some kind, or a manufacturing deadline that we need to meet, so we need to increase the number of personnel on hand to help us with a shift or to complete a job, right? So we've built in some factors within the software to adjust shifts accordingly. And then, of course, the UI has to work, right? The UI has to be easy to use, easy to train new personnel, line managers, shift managers, etc., to be able to use it. So for shift management, we really wanted to create a rostering process that is simple with an intuitive drag and drop experience, right? So that's certainly some of the goals that we've looked for and that we've built in the initial phases. Okay, and then there's shift management on the shift management side as well, what we call smarter scheduling, right? So understanding, and this was actually a big one that we received feedback from existing clients was, okay, I can build a shift, but are we on point? Do we understand that this is a manageable shift for those that we have invited or that we have scheduled to work at, right? So do we have built-in checks to ensure that we're avoiding conflicts, to avoid overlapping or duplicate shifts, so that whatever we do schedule, it makes sense, it's clean and easy to understand, but also works for the employees for whom has been scheduled for. In many cases, businesses are okay to duplicate shifts. They don't want to have to copy, or sorry, they don't want to have to rebuild, or reinvent the wheel if a shift or a shift pattern has worked. So can we copy schedules across multiple weeks, at least for a given period of time, so we're not building out everything week by week, one by one, shift by shift as needed? Do we have templates that we can then apply to later periods? Can we copy shifts to different periods? And then plan ahead confidently with support for recurring shift patterns, right? So if we have seasonality in place, that we have kind of standard requirements for different seasons or different periods of the year, can we consider those things when building and managing shifts? So those are some of the other things we've done around scheduling, planning, and maintaining schedules. So also, there's this concept in software, right, of understanding that the left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing, right? And I think a lot of organizations would understand the intonation for and what that means, right, and what the implications of that are, right? So if employees have applied for leave and that leave has been approved, what is their available ability for the shift? Do the people scheduling the shifts, do they see that information? Is that completely clear? Do they know who's available to be scheduled or rostered for a given shift, a given day, a given week, etc. Right? So understanding leave information in real time, before assigning shifts. Um, if we create something that is a conflict, are we aware that it's a conflict? Do we have anything to at least update or remind the scheduler that whatever they've just performed could be a conflict for any number of given reasons? So understanding getting instant alerts to make sure that we're building a schedule that's going to work. But also highlighting things like holidays along with time off to make sure that nothing slips through, right? So considerations need to be made in terms of number of hours that an employee has worked and the implications if that person is then to work a holiday. What is the impact on the cost? Do we need to understand these things so that we're not perhaps overworking given employees or putting someone in a position where they're going to um, potentially get a lot of overtime? Maybe that's totally fine, and maybe it's unavoidable, but at least you want to know, right? So people should be able to know, or you should be able to know what's being scheduled and what the implications of that are potentially moving forward on payroll, right? Okay, so let's take a few minutes to talk about employee scheduling and intelligence. So we've introduced this concept of employee focused view as part of the initial rollout. And that is to say, okay, well, show me one employee and show me what they're scheduled for over the next week, the next pay period, the next month, etc. So we can understand, okay, we have scheduled Julianne significantly over the next 2 weeks. Maybe this is more than we anticipated. Let's get a good view to the total hours worked and the impact that could have on her. Maybe that's totally fine. Maybe we've discussed it with her. Maybe she's even requested it, and that's okay. Maybe not, right? So we just need to get the information so that we can make good business decisions to understand the amount of work people are being scheduled for, to make sure that works for the employee and for the business, right? So that employee focused view is something we've introduced, like, as mentioned, integrated leave info, conditional displays, holiday visualizations, view adaptability, etc. Spotting workload balances issues. Maybe the opposite is true. Maybe we've noticed that Julie has been scheduled far less than other people, but she's fully aware, capable, and willing to do to do additional work. Can we use this visibility to make sure that we're balancing out workload issues well to meet the needs of all employees? And then, of course, reducing scheduling mistakes, linking leave and shifts together, right? Understanding that when people are on leave, we definitely don't want to schedule them if it's been approved leave, etc. Or in cases where we may, in some cases, need to call someone back from scheduled leave, or at least request them if conflicts arise, and we do perhaps need to at least ask if they're willing to work perhaps on a scheduled leave day. Do we have some tools to make sure that we're able to do that and to view scenarios like that? Okay, so some further elements to that. Search and filters and capabilities like that. So this is a really cool feature. Um, Understanding what skills are required to do given jobs or given roles, and making sure that we have personnel staffed in order to do those jobs. So we have this concept within the roster module to filter on employees that have certain skills or have received certain training, or are otherwise properly equipped to do the job that we're scheduling them for, right? So if someone needs a food handling certificate, for example, or something along those lines in order to do a certain job, let's filter our available employees by those that are qualified for that role, right? Can we go ahead and make sure that we do that? We can certainly filter by things like job title, but then further beyond that, other skills, training, or other requirements required to do the job. So that's a really great feature that's been introduced in the early stages of this development. So then we're applying filters to apply only on to focus only on employees that you need to schedule or who are capable of doing the job that we want to schedule them for, right? And then, of course, again, the UI is really, really nice and fantastic with our latest UI developments. So you have clutter-free view and a very clear view of what you're doing, what you're scheduling, and how you're doing it. And let's talk about control and collaboration. So what this really means here is that HR systems have a lot of sensitive data, right? So it's really key to us when we release a new product to make sure that the access rights are going to be spot on in terms of who can see what and who can do what with the information on the screen, right? So managers need to have the right level of access, but only the right level of access. So exposing them to information that's only relevant for them to do their job in terms of how they need to build a roster with the right personnel. So we've introduced new tools to manage user roles more effectively to meet these needs. Team leaders can, of course, publish or make adjustments to schedules for their groups. So they'll be able to have that collaboration ability on the fly. They're the people who often know a little bit more and need to be able to manage these things a little bit more closely. So they're going to have visibility and role access to be able to make adjustments on the fly or publish and manage shifts for their groups. And then, of course, auditing, right? So built-in auditing is going to be available. You'll be able to see who made changes, when they made changes. So if conflicts arise, if there's ever worried about things like favoritism by scheduling employees more or less or different groups, you'll have audit trail access. So if there needs to be any oversight on scheduling issues, you will have that access and that visibility and reporting available to understand what may have happened on the ground to make sure everything is going according to company policy and to how and that everything's operating the way you'd like it to. So a little bit further on access auditing and communication. So if you just a recap, control who can see and publish schedules for added security, assign rights by team or manager to keep the process clean, and then, as mentioned, the full audit trail for accountability and compliance, right? So some key highlights there. Okay, so let's move on to the next phase here. Let's talk about time and attendance. And again, this is really about how these two elements work together, right? So time and attendance and roster are really two peas in a pod, right? They do need to work tightly together in order to work effectively. So let's talk a little bit about attendance management and some changes that have been made within the attendance capabilities to link up better and produce a better overall experience for a time and attendance and roster. So a few things include enhanced payroll integration capabilities, right? So creating a defined report that is based on the actuals that have been worked is something that we've always done as part of time and attendance, or at least for the last several years. But we've had to increase some capabilities around this. A lot of that really ties into what's happening on the ground level. Early arrivals or late departures or early departures, et cetera, right? So understanding when did an employee punch in, when did an employee punch out, and what are the implications of that? Did they punch in 1 minute early? That's fine. We don't necessarily pay them an extra minute, or if they punch in 15 or 20 minutes early, that's fine. How does that relate to their roster? What are the implications of that? Do we need to round that time out, or do we need to include it on their pay report, or do we need to do both? Do we need to give you the access to understand these scenarios, why that happened? Is there an approval mechanism to approve the time? Perhaps the employee was asked to come in early to complete some additional work or do some prep prior to their shift start time. What are the considerations of that? So adding tools to help you build the payroll report, the attendance report, the pay hours report out to meet those needs more closely is something that we've worked very closely on over the last several months as we've ramped up the later stages of the roster development. So giving some additional tools to make sure that that reporting and those processes can be managed according to the needs of different clients and the flexibility is there. But of course, the entry point for this information is often a biometric device of some kind. So again, for context, traditionally OrangeHRM has offered a number of ways to gather data, punch data, right? So we had always had a widget within the application. That really doesn't work for your average employees in hospitality, retail, healthcare, et cetera, and many other industries. So those places would either, in some cases, use our mobile app, but what's more frequent would be a biometric clock device of some kind, right? So a punch in or punch out either on some type of panel or an iPad, or a clock device, whether that be a fingerprint reader, a face scanner, or even just a device where someone enters a PIN code to clock in. So improved biometric integration capabilities is something that we've worked on significantly to really be precise and provide accurate data and smooth integration with different systems, clocks, et cetera, that we're using, and the knock-on effect that obviously this will have on roster, on scheduling, and making sure that everyone knows what they need to know. Okay, so let's take a minute then to talk about upcoming features in both of these areas. So we'll take a moment to talk about attendance management, right? So the work on attendance has been significant recently, but there's a lot that's still in progress in order to make sure that it works ideally and in the best possible way with the roster module, and indeed, of course, with other features that we have. So seamless integration, attendance will work hand in hand with the new roster module, right? So that is close to being complete, but we're working on some additional integration points between the two features. Enhanced support for overnight shifts. So we do support overnight shifts currently within the product, but we're adding some additional reporting and some additional considerations, let's call it, for how we track overnight shifts and folks that work, beyond a single day, right? So if someone works an 8 o'clock shift to say 4 o'clock in the morning, what are the implications? Let's say perhaps the next day is a weekend or the next day is a holiday. What are the implications on things like the payroll report and things like that? So some of that's available now, but we're tidying up a few things and syncing those things a bit more. And enhanced tracking. So what we're learning too is the requirement around real-time information for things like who's late, who needs to be accountable for things like that. Shift managers need to make decisions with the most current available information. How can we get more information to them, and how quickly? How they need to get those alerts if someone's late or hasn't punched in, etc. So enhanced tracking for things like that to monitor lateness, but also monitoring people who are early so that we can understand these things and boost accountability in the area of attendance management. And then in terms of upcoming roster features, right? So what's next on the roster side? Well, we're building out some additional reports and more comprehensive reports around roster, attendance, and leave data so that we can get a better picture of overall performance metrics, absenteeism, and some other factors that many of our clients have requested around the report building that we're going to be able to provide for them. Performance insights. How did we perform as a workforce, comparing planned shifts with actual attendance? What are some of the gaps? What are the potential highlighted possible reasons for some of these gaps, and what can we do to address them? So we're looking to develop some features to assist there. And then flexible reports. Interestingly enough, what we've heard loud and clear is a lot of our clients have said, we just want the raw data. We manipulate it in different ways. Sometimes that's in a BI tool. Sometimes that's in combining it with ERP data. We do have integration with BI tools that we've already put in place to monitor and update some of this information. But many of our clients have said, just give us the raw data. We're going to use it and manage it as we see fit. So being able to provide comprehensive details via Excel or CSV for easy sharing and analysis is something that we're working on as well. Okay, so we've covered a lot here in roughly 30 minutes. So let's turn it back over to the audience for Q&A. So to kick that off, Julie, I'll pass it back to you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so we are open for any questions that you may have. You can feel free to put them in the chat bar. Thank you, Matt, for that session as well, and for taking us through the features and upcoming features as well. Just a note that this recording will also be shared with all attendees and participants after the meeting. So you will receive a recorded version of what was discussed and showcased. All right. So Matt, we have a few questions here. One of them is roster supported in the mobile app?
Great question. So yes, the roster module is supported via the mobile app, and it is something where once schedules are published, once rosters are published, employees would be able to access them via the mobile app. So yes.
Right. Other one is when we make changes in rosters, can we see these changes or can they be tracked?
Okay, so if a change is made to the roster by, let's say, if it's done by a main, like a location administrator or a shift manager, yes, you would be able to see that those changes have been made and also who made them, right? So I think that's the key, right? So if more than one person has access to see and edit or change schedules, which could be the case, it may not be always. You may have only dedicated, a handful of individuals who would have access, or maybe even one individual that has access to a given location schedules, in which case only they can make changes. But in those cases where access is available for more people, yes, you would have a full audit trail to be able to see who made changes to the roster.
Early arrivals, will the system allow for approval prior?
Julie, did I lose you?
Oh, hello? Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Did I lose you, Julie? Oh, got it. Okay, sorry.
Sorry. So there's one question which is in relation to early arrivals, will the system allow for approval prior to if the employee is required to work extra hours?
I see. Okay, so that's a multi-layered question there. So at a base level, the we can set up rules by which how we should handle those, right? So let's say, for example, um, let's take a basic example, right? So I'm meant to work today starting at 8 o'clock, but I show up at 7:30 and I punch in. So the system will already obviously know, okay, so Matt punched in at 7:30 today. We can review that and say, or for one, the time and attendance module can say, what do we do when an employee punches in early without prior notice? So if Matt punched in half an hour early, what's the rounding rule for Matt or Matt's group? It could be, sorry, Matt, that wasn't authorized, so we're going to round you to 8. Nobody authorized you to start at 8 o'clock. Or nobody authorized you to start early. So the system could round it accordingly. Now, if the system needs to react differently by means, like maybe an organization may accept an early punch up to a certain point, half hour, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, etc., that can be set up accordingly as well. I think where you're going with this question, however, is can approval be sought prior to that happening, right? So the short answer is yes, right? So we can set up a process by which a supervisor either requests that an employee or gets authorization or gives pre-approval for an employee to come in early through our request desk feature, and then that can be processed, based on that approval workflow that's done ahead of time. So yes, that can be done. In terms of how it ties into time and attendance, we'd have to kind of get into the nitty gritty a little bit with you more to talk about how specifically it would link, and we need to know a little bit more about your requirements. But the short answer is yes. We'd love to work through those contingencies and those scenarios a bit more closely with you, though, to give you a clear answer of how it would work.
Okay, we have two more questions, Matt. One is, how can I start working with this as I'm not able to find it in the system?
Yeah, so that's going back to our, maybe I'll sneak back our slides to the front quickly just to use a visual tool. And this is the one, right? So obviously our core modules are listed here, right? But you'll only see in your OrangeHRM system modules that you're licensed for, right? So for example, if you're licensed for leave, time and attendance, and recruitment, you would see those, but you wouldn't see anything else in these areas, right? So most of you probably aren't licensed for roster, given that it's quite new. So you won't see roster listed within your module. So we would have to license you for this. But again, please contact us at sales@orangehrm.com. We can review your needs. We can quote you on adding these capabilities to your system, and then obviously from there discuss the rollout, the particulars, etc. Right. So it is a new module, so it does need to be licensed separately from anything that you're already using.
Okay, we have one last question, Matt. So there's actually two, but I'll combine them as they're quite the same.
Sure.
So it's regarding the time and attendance module. Can it be used to capture attendance regarding remote work? And then the second one also reads, how can the system be used to monitor employees who work remotely? Can the system track time and attendance for flexi work arrangements?
So yes, we can track remote work, right? So I'll give you a classic example. There could be a case where you have, I'll give you a few examples quickly, right? So you may have several approved, let's call it locations, in which an employee can be working, in which case they would need to clock in or out from that exact location. So in the absence of, say, a time clock device of some kind, they can use their mobile app as an example to clock in or out. And there's two functions there. One is we would set up the IP address of that location. So the employee would have to be logged in, for example, to the Wi-Fi at that location to punch in there. They would not be able to punch in from somewhere else, like the restaurant next door, for example. That wouldn't be something that would be possible. But I think where you're going more with this question is really the idea of another classic example I'd like to use. Let's say a delivery driver, perhaps, or a salesperson who's out meeting clients. So they may clock in at their client site and then clock out when leaving the client site, in which case we can track that, and we have the concept of geolocation. So we'd be able to understand where was the employee located when they clocked in and when they clocked out, to ensure that they were, yes, okay, so yeah, they were actually on site at that client's location for that duration. So we're tracking remote work in that way, right? To track their clock in and out, right? So a few different tools that we have in order to make sure you've got compliance and make sure that employees are actually doing what they say they're doing, or at minimum, at least that they are where they say they were when they were doing the work that they were doing. So hope that that answered both questions with regards to remote work and how we track it.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you for everyone to pass it over thank you for everyone who asked all questions. If there are any questions that were not asked, we will definitely feel free to address you directly. Over to you, Matt, to close up.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. And again, just a quick reminder, sales@orangehrm.com. If we didn't answer any questions today, you can forward them to us that way. Or if you'd like to set up a meeting to discuss our roster capabilities and your needs more closely, we're happy to do that as well. So please reach out to us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.